Hey guys, Oop. Welcome to our sales workshop for today. We'll just give it a couple of seconds to let a few more join before I kick right into it. All right. Welcome to today's sales workshop on SecureNetwork. I'm joined regularly, like I'm joined with Aaron Jacobs from Sophos. Today we are going to be discussing identifying opportunities and tactics for closing deals and leveraging SecureNetwork to drive more margin within your business. So this is a follow-on from our recent product launch of SecureNetwork. So if you missed the webinar on SecureNetwork or the launch of that, please feel free to check that out. We won't be doing a deep dive into the product as such today, or the service today, but we will be doing a deep dive into the actual generating opportunities and those sort of things. As always, this is recorded, so if you do need to drop off or you want to share it around afterwards, feel free. And I guess most importantly, let me put the next slide up. If you're joining today, there is a free book that we are giving out. So make sure you scan that QR code. And if you do miss that and you want to get a copy of it, just reach out to Meryl or our marketing team and we will organize that for you. AJ, this was one of your recommendations. Do you mind telling us a little bit about this book and why you found it so good for selling cyber?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I'll start with the fact it's an easy read. It takes about 2 hours to read this book. If you're a quick reader, probably an hour. So I'll start there because I'm not a big reader of books. But the reason it's good, it's targeted at MSPs, anyone that's solution selling and needs to sell outcomes. But it really just breaks down very simply ways for you to be able to articulate, and it goes through a concept of what it calls revealing the gap. So when you're talking to end clients, going through sort of the stages, and it gives you really good tips on how to start those conversations, how to keep it open and honest, and then reveal to someone who might think that their security is perfect, or maybe they're not really interested in security, or they're on the fence, they're not sure, the whole money thing, whatever. It really just helps you highlight to them that there is a gap in their environment today. So yeah, great little ways to do it. Really good sort of things that you can take and use straight away.
Yeah, cool. Selling cybersecurity and having those conversations can often be a tough conversation, right? Because customers expect us to be looking after it regardless. They just think it's IT is an umbrella term, and hey, so it is important to figure out how you're going to have that conversation. Some customers are going to be more trickier than others. So yeah, check out the book. It's free. So if you haven't scanned that QR code, like I said, just hit us up and we'll sort that out for you. All right. So we're not going to do a deep dive, but I just wanted to do a quick recap on what SecureNetwork is. If you haven't heard of it already, SecureNetwork is our effort of changing the narrative around disjointed security and connectivity solutions. So SecureNetwork is a simple turnkey solution. It's a endpoint to edge security service that ties Sophos MDR all the way with connectivity, all of the on-site equipment for your routers and things like that, full management, monitoring, all the SLAs that are required for an internet connection to get resolved, any issues that come up with it to get resolved quickly, as well as full firewalling delivered from the data center. So very quickly, next slide, there's a little bit of a network diagram there, but what this solution is really about is tying everything together. Right, we see a lot of, and we're going to talk a bit more about this in terms of the risks, but we see a lot of, and when I say a lot, I mean a lot of connections out there that either the time to resolution is really bad because the wrong solution's been put in from the word go, right? So it might be the wrong router, no firewall at all, or no UTM. It hasn't been patched, et cetera, et cetera. There might be no SLA. So when something does go wrong, it's hard for us to actually get something fixed with the upstream carriers like NBN. So what SecureNetwork is our effort to standardize that. right? It's a best of breed solution. Again, I use that word turnkey, right? So from a sales and a conversation with the customer perspective, it's a lot simpler. And because it's more of a bundle, there is a discount across all of the products that are included. So the pricing is more attractive to purchase it as this rather than the a la carte option. Now, a la carte is still available. You can go through our partner portal and order all the individual bits, but as a solution, it is more cost effective and it's fully managed, right? So from a margin perspective, it is really geared to increase those margins for you and stop that margin burn, right? Connectivity, I was on a call with those of you that know James Davis from Pax8 the other day about margin burn from connectivity. Connectivity should be a driving force for revenue, should actually increase your margins, but in many cases it actually can burn margin because it's not thought about correctly at the beginning. Now, security these days is a complex sort of ecosystem of noise, I guess, and so which is why we've partnered with Sophos. So the big thing about SecureNetwork is that hosted network take care of all of the network layer. Sophos are taking care of all of the security layer, right? So all that telemetry from the endpoints, all of that, all those security bits and pieces are being actually shipped to Sophos's data lake, and their team aren't just monitoring that, they're doing the remediation around that, right? So if there's a virus or something on an endpoint, they will actually remediate that, and most importantly, from a cyber insurance perspective, do root cause analysis. That's a very quick high level. Like I said, we've done a full webinar on this, and today isn't sort of about that. But AJ, is there anything else that you'd sort of want to add in there that I may have missed?
No, I think you did a really fantastic job of it, mate. Yeah, that just, there's things that you may be doing today on a break fix component, and we'll get into that. There's things that you may or may not be doing at all from a security component, and that's really where this solution brings all of those together in a very nice way for you, as Ben said, in a turnkey solution. So really, I guess time critical and helps you, right? It helps you as an MSP to not burn resources on this stuff. So.
And like from a pricing perspective, very cost effective as well. So a standard TC4 comes in at $250 a month, right? That includes everything, including the hardware on site, all the licensing, 100 by 100 for CBD pricing. For a fiber service is $460. And again, including all the hardware, full monitoring management. That's from a connectivity piece of it. From an endpoint protection, you're around $14 per endpoint device. But hit up your account manager for more details around pricing. But let's get into identifying risks within your business. So let's talk about the lay of the land and what we see both from a hosted side, but also from a a Sophos security side. But AJ, you ran an MSP for what, 20 years, yeah? So you've lived and breathed this, just as much as the rest of us, right?
Absolutely.
So, all right, I'll hand over to you, sir.
Yeah, no problem. So look, as MSPs, there's a lot. We all know there's a lot, but really a lot of the stuff here from a risk perspective, this really burns into your margin and costs as well. But if we think about it from a pure risk perspective at this point, you all might be doing something differently, and you might be today putting in standardized endpoint protection. I hope you are, and standardized routers and firewalls everywhere. But in many cases, we know, and I know from what the telemetry Ben you see on SecureNetwork or just on your WAN connections, there's a lot that don't. And there's a lot of, as we call them, SOHO routers. And we'll call them routers because realistically, I mean, they're firewalls, technically, I guess.
It's a loose term, isn't it? Firewalls.
Loose term, yeah. They're not a security appliance, that's for sure. They're not a UTM, as it's known, a unified threat management device, or they're not doing the security component. So while they're acting like a door or a window, whatever analogy you want to use, where it's closing ports and opening ports if you allow things in and out, and it's doing that. What the SOHO routers or firewalls, non-security based firewalls, are not doing is inspecting that traffic. They're not looking for malicious attacks. They're not looking for certain techniques. They're not looking for command and control servers and IPs, the IP addresses that are coming through. Are they safe? Are they known bad? Are they, what are they doing? That's the really important part when we get into the security world. So that's the security risk. If you're not putting those types of devices in, then it's literally open traffic. It's open season for whatever you want is going on. And that's two-way. That means your internal devices, it's open slather outbound. And then it's also anything on the planet inbound as well. So there's severe risks in doing that. And I'm sure you're all very, you want to protect your clients. You want to make sure they've got a secure environment. That is the front door. That's locking the front door and making sure there's a camera at least there or something that's watching that traffic and going to stop things on the way through.
We
You'll see
actually
the
see
second. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was going to say we actually see a lot of connections out there as well, where unfortunately they have great endpoint protection, security solutions, but not at the edge. So just consider that like Aaron said, it's kind of like leaving the front door open if you don't get that piece right. So it's a fundamental piece. But looking at the connections across the board, we actually don't see that many proper UTM connections on the business services that our partners are providing. Not enough, not a high enough percentage that would allow me to sleep at night anyway.
Yeah, and I think, Ben, let's be honest, right? If someone goes, well, I'm going to pay X a month for the internet, and I can buy that $80 thing from Officeworks or whatever it is to get it running, great. Like it's operational. But I think something that really as an MSP, and we can talk about this in costs and things later, but really it shouldn't just be about getting it working. Like getting it up and running is just step one. It's not, okay, now it's working, I can walk away, because that's when we get into all these other problems down the track. So logs and reporting, logs and reporting are a big one. A lot of people don't think about this, but if you did go through an incident where you needed to engage cyber insurance, where you needed to engage someone like Sophos for incident response, we need logs to be able to do that job properly. You may think of logs and reporting from, I want to be, maybe someone in a business wants to run web filtering reports and see what their users have been looking at. Great. You need something recording that traffic and doing that role there as well for that. But logs from a forensic perspective are really, really important. So if you want to worry about, has any data been stolen? That's a big topic today. We're going to look for communication through that firewall. We're going to look for spikes in traffic. We're going to look for various destinations. And that, again, needs to be logged and recorded. And if you don't have a proper firewall doing that, that's a big risk.
I'm sure everyone on the call's had someone say, oh, hey, it's slow.
Yeah.
But they don't give you any details, right? It's kind of, whether it be we're troubleshooting an internet connection or a slow performing laptop, you need details. And for root cause analysis of security, that's even more fundamental, right?
Exactly.
Cyber insurance ain't going to pay out if you got no proof that it's fixed.
No, and it's yeah. Look, being an incident response myself and seeing that so much now, it's actually really horrible how much this happens. So 0-day vulnerabilities, right? These are a big one. These are really, really important for a number of reasons. Like we have 0-day vulnerabilities in everything. But if you think about a 0-day vulnerability in your firewalls, or even not a 0-day, but just a vulnerability in your firewalls that's now known, there's some very big names at the moment going through multiple rounds of vulnerabilities. You as an MSP, you have to go and manage that. You have to go and upgrade them. You have to do it quickly. Otherwise your customers are at risks. And a lot of people don't realize that if the firewall has a vulnerability, attackers can get inside that firewall. So it's not about what you've opened up anymore. It's not about that. You can't say, oh, great, I've closed all my ports. It doesn't matter. If these things have vulnerabilities where someone can get in, they can use that as a landing point to then get inside the network and poke around and do more damage. So yeah, that's a problem. And if you've ever been, if you have 100 customers, 50 customers, and all of a sudden your firewall of choice has a 0-day vulnerability and there's no automatic or just bulk way of being able to remediate that, that's a huge amount of work for you to do. And that, again, burns into your margin and things like that, let alone the risk. So
yeah, I'll add in there as well. Just for those on the call, have a think about the connections that you've got, and if you've actually patched those firewalls, those routers, or those UTMs, right? Because it's amazing and a really concerning a number of customers that we see haven't got patched appliances, right? So whatever the brand is, even if it is a high-end security appliance, there is still 0-day vulnerabilities out there. There was a big one for one of the major security vendors only the other day, right?
Yes.
So they all have to be monitored. So as a low-hanging fruit, if you're not doing it, get someone to check it internally as soon as possible, because it's like every week at the moment.
Yeah, it's only getting worse, and it only will get worse. So that really comes down to that disjointed security solutions part, Ben. So if you are using multiple different firewalls out there, if you buy something, whatever's available from Officeworks or whatever you can get your hands on stock wise, and you now do have various different products out there. How do you manage that? If there is a vulnerability from vendor X today, do you have it on record? Do you know how to be able to go look for that? Standardizing things makes a really that's really beneficial to you, but also having those ways to be able to fix that. So, because if you don't know, or you sold it once off and now the customer's at risk, when they get hacked, guess who they're coming back to blame, even if you haven't done business with them for a long time. So this comes back to having that conversation and identifying the gap. Because a lot of people will be scared about selling a $1,200, $1,500 firewall, whatever it is. But I can assure you, over the long run of what's the lifetime on a connection, Ben? 3 years, 5 years? I don't know.
Yeah.
What's a standard lifetime? Something like that. So,
Yeah, I'd say around that. And
yeah,
I think that with that, that disjointedness as well, using that word, we often this is often solved by having the right conversation right at the start. Right. So if we're not having that conversation with the customer and we're just going, I'll call it's an internet connection, and we're just putting out something from Officeworks or whatever we've got that's sitting around the office, that's where that disjointedness comes from. And it will come back to bite you, whether it be from a security or just general support issue. It will come back to bite you. Standardizing and having that conversation with your customer from the word go is it should just be part of your process, right? Because at least then you're putting the onus on the customer to say no. If you haven't had that conversation with them about the right solution, right, you're not being that trusted advisor, right? Yeah. You're putting not just yourself at risk, but you're putting the customer at risk, right? You're in that position of being that trusted advisor. It is important that you have the right conversation at the word go, rather than going straight down to the cheapest element, because like I said, it will bite you, and your customer expects that you're taking care of it, right? So at least if they say no, well, that's on them.
That's right. And I mean, those last 3 points there, I mean, human error and skill shortages, that's common. But if you are using different firewalls and different routers, and you have your staff having to be trained in how to do these same things in multiple vendors, that becomes a problem. That does waste time, which is often the barrier that you don't measure properly, and you won't reflect that on your margin pressure. But coming back to what Ben said about having that conversation first, customer assumptions, cost management, reputation, and brand, it all comes into that. So I've been there multiple times over the years. I've done it wrong, I've done it right. But I can promise you that if you put something in to make it work, and then 6 months down the track, they're having internet speed issues, and Ben, you'd have a lot more data on this when the firewall's not adequately supported, or as in not spec'd out correctly and things like that, that's hard to troubleshoot, especially if you don't have a device where you can even monitor the CPU and track that regularly and things like that. So all of this comes down to ultimately your reputation and brand, because if you said to the customer up front, you need to spend this on this $1,500, let's just make up numbers, $1,500 firewall to do it properly, and they turn around and say, no, it's fine, I can get something from Officeworks to do the job, at least you've done your bit. And if it comes back later that there's a problem, you can turn back to it and say, you didn't take our recommendations, like we said. That helps your reputation and brand. You might think that's going to start causing conflict, but at the end of the day, you are the expert, you are the guiding them. And if they do something wrong, it's a lot easier. There's a right way and a wrong way to tell someone that they've done the wrong thing, of course, but at least you can push that out. And it's always handy to have a decent firewall laying around to be able to put it in and prove a point. So I think that's probably it, Ben. I think there's lots of risks. We could go on about risks as an MSP all day, but from this perspective,
this was just laying the land, right? And keep in mind, from there are thousands of connections that we see, and I want to challenge everyone on the call here that even partners that I know that do the good security appliances out there, they don't have them at every single customer, right? Because they've got those customers that don't want to spend the money, or whatever the case might be. And I would dare say that there wouldn't be a partner in our partner ecosystem that wouldn't have a vulnerability out there, right, with one of their appliances and whatnot. It is scary. I mean, talk about some brands, what was it, Draytech a couple of weeks ago, or months ago now, major vulnerabilities, major. But they're not the only one. It's constant, right? It was TP-Link like 2 weeks ago. It was Fortinet last week.
Which is about their second or third round. I mean, and again, I'm not picking on vendors here. We had one last year. So, everyone has them. We're not trying to shy away from that. but it is about how you can get those fixes out quickly.
Yeah.
In the Sophoses, for example, they have automatic hot fixes that go out. So security, regardless of you patching or not. There are sometimes you still obviously need to patch, but again, not monitoring it is really, really important. So yeah.
All right, so we've talked a little bit of the risk element, but what about the noise, right? So with all of these bits and pieces, you know, you add monitoring onto something and you just get so many alerts, right? Who's watching them? How do you filter out what's important and whatnot? So AJ, here's a bit of a diagram of all of the different things that might generate noise. Talk us through it.
Easy. So there, as you said, there's many different technologies here in your customers' environments. This is a very simple network diagram that's meant to highlight that in any environment, you probably have some, if not all of these things producing logs and security telemetry that at the end of the day, someone really should be looking at. If you've ever looked at a firewall log, it's not a pretty thing to look at. Ben, I'm sure you've looked at
What are you
many
talking
in your
about?
time.
I love spending my weekends and, you know, crawling through security logs.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? Just massive blobs of text that mean nothing with buried scores of alerts and things like that, right? It's not an easy thing to do. Even if you've done it a lot, it's still very hard to do. So having something to do that for you is immensely valuable. But the reality is, because it's so hard, no one is actually doing that. But even, I would dare say, a lot of the alerts that decent firewalls are generating for you are probably not being monitored either. Some of them may, and I don't want to say that everyone's not doing it properly, but if you manage 300 or 400 firewalls across your MSP, or 200 or 100, even 50, if you've only got limited resources, are you really looking at all the alerts that just your firewalls are talking about? When we get into your email providers and your spam filters and firewalls are very much, they probably fall in the bucket of set and forget. They're put in, they're there to do a job, and most people think, great, they're going to do that job. And sure, they will. They'll block stuff, they'll allow stuff, but the true value of these alerts is in what it's observed but has still gone through. So any decent security firewall is actually still observing traffic going through and making alerts about what they call unactioned alerts. So your spam filters do this, almost everything does this. It may have not taken action on the thing that it observed, but it still logged it, that it saw it was suspicious. So these are the things that really come to play. And, you know, just looking at it, you've got endpoint. So your antivirus products and your endpoint solutions, or EDR tools, your email platforms, your firewalls, so your cloud providers. So cloud, built in the cloud, security was something that was thought of, whereas our on-premise Active Directory environments, security was an afterthought. So it's harder to do that. So that's why the cloud environments have all these different ways, and your identity providers have really good telemetry and alerting of when user sign-ins might be at risk. But again, if you get a risky sign-in alert for a user at one of your customers on Friday night at 11 p.m., when are you actually going to look at that? Is it Monday? Is it Friday at 11 p.m.? Is it, don't know, the next time I log into their tenancy and take a look? And that's what leads to this. And yes, it's a fun slide. It's a nice thing to look at. But the reality is, if you actually took all of your customers' alerts from all of the different technologies that you have, and you fed them to you as an MSP and your IT team, that is exactly what it would feel like. You're already sitting there, all right, give me the alerts, and bang, you would spend so much time in just investigating what they are and what they actually mean. So it basically, if you want to go to the next one, it's what your technicians will ultimately look like. It will lead to this. It will lead to them not knowing what to look at, too many tickets coming through, and effectively just saying, well, I don't know, I'm just, I've seen this, I've investigated this once before, it was a false positive, so now it's forever going to be a false positive. I'm never going to look at that alert again. Close ticket, close ticket, close ticket. Or, as I've seen in many MSPs, we get the alerts, but I'm just going to bury them on this board over here because I'll look at them when I get time. And guess what? Guess what never happens in MSP land? When I get time. You never do get time. So just burying those alerts as a record, I mean, on one hand, it's great, but if a customer got hacked or something and turned around and said to you, this has been going on for ages, how did you not know about it? And you turned around and said, well, we did get alert about that, 9 weeks ago, but we haven't looked at it yet. That's not going to be a good conversation. So
no, it's not.
No.
All right. So I guess, well, tying back to Secure Network and as a solution, as an opportunity, you can start to think about, going back to this slide quickly, all the things that do generate noise, right? Secure Network is designed to take a lot of that telemetry and standardize it and ship it off to the right teams, right? Effectively outsourcing that piece of it so that you don't have to worry about that, right? So straight away, you can decrease your costs while standardizing your margin to get actually predictable margin, right? Because all of your customers are starting to become more standardized. So let's talk about the costs when you don't standardize. So what are the hidden costs, AJ? I mean, you've ran an MSP for 20 years. Tell us a little bit about the cost that you faced.
I'll tell you what you don't get paid for is your customers that you have a managed service agreement, and then the vendor comes out with some kind of vulnerability in their firewalls, and you now have 200 firewalls to patch yesterday because it's urgent. And this attack is it's not just because there's a vulnerability. I guess we should call that out, Ben. Like everything has vulnerabilities, but not every vulnerability is being attacked.
It's not going to be like keys to the kingdom as well.
But I mean that's yes. Like I've seen things sort of they don't start as the keys to the kingdom, and they very much end up as. But it's more around what's being attacked in the wild. So if it's a true 0 day, you've got no time, it's being attacked in the wild. You either have to mitigate that on 200 plus firewalls, or you have to patch them. So you don't get paid for that. That's bad. As any MSP knows, that's measuring their time and their revenue that goes into profitability of their agreements. That's a real problem. So ongoing firmware patching alone without the 0 day urgent component is hard to do. And you need a way to be able to schedule that and make sure it's happening regularly. Failure costs. So this is another one I think, Ben, you would know all too well, that hardware failure, right, we can't avoid it. Hardware failures happen. Things blow up. Power surges occur.
It's IT, right? I mean, we've all got a job because IT shit happens.
It does. Right? But what's important is there's a reason some of these products cost more than others, because they use better components. They don't fail as often. And quite often when you have ongoing licenses, you have advanced RMAs and all these other things to go with that.
Vendor support in general.
Just vendor support in general. That's right. Someone you can call the phone and say, hey, I need something. I need help. And they will help you. You often forget that if hardware fails over a 3 to 5 year period, you haven't allowed the costs to reconfigure a new device, ship on site or get on site, reinstall, migrate, cut over. Those things are very much huge hidden costs. So you want to be thinking about this again upfront and making sure that you're doing everything in your power to not have to carry this stuff over the next 3 years. It's all well and good putting out the cheapest solution, the cheapest hardware, the cheapest link, the cheapest anything. And then great, it works on day one. And then you have that customer that nags every month or so about speeds or problems, or the worst ones when they don't tell you for 12 months that anything's wrong. And then they leave and they say, it's been terrible since the day you put it in, but they never had a conversation with you about that. They're the real problem ones, and they will cost you obviously a lot more because it costs you a full agreement.
Yeah.
And then of course, sorry, go Ben.
Yeah, I was just going to say, even from our side, like, I mean, we see this when we're supporting partners, right? And the most common one's a very popular brand at the moment, and I've actually got nothing against the brand, but it's a good example. So Ubiquity devices, great centralized management, a lot better than a lot of the more premium ones. But what it doesn't have is vendor support. It's community support. So when there's a configuration issue or there's a quirk with a patch release or something, those tickets that flow through to us, and we can't help because there's no vendor support. Right. So that then impacts the customer. So you just need to, I guess, going back to that conversation right at the beginning and setting that expectation with the customer, understanding the risk and understanding, and having that conversation around that is an opportunity in itself. Right. So giving that customer that opportunity to sort of, t-shirt sizes, hey, this is your premium, this is your middle of the range, and this is your low cost, and these are the pros and cons of each. So yeah, anyway, back to you, AJ.
Yeah, but you're right though, highlighting the gap at the start, because if you saved $600 on a firewall at the start, who's paying for the difference when, like you said, Ben, if a device doesn't have vendor support, who's doing that community support? Sure, there might be an answer out there. We all know as techs and MSP people that you might be able to Google and find the answer. But you
might take 3 hours doing it. Exactly.
You might take 3 hours. You might take 3 days. You might take 3 weeks. Trust me, I've been in some some doozies over the years, right? And at the root cause, you just sit there and scratch your head and go, how is that even a thing? But you spend so much time getting to that end result. Look, I've been through that. I've done many years of doing various different community supported products. And if I had my time again, I would never have taken that on. While it worked for years, it ultimately burnt me in different ways that I probably wasn't measuring at the time because I wasn't mature enough to think about it then. So, yeah. But yes, and then ongoing management costs. So the alert management, we've pretty much already spoken about. The troubleshooting, which is what we just spoke about. But yeah, just the ongoing management costs of what does that device actually do? And are you taking full advantage of that? If it's producing all these amazing alerts about what's going on in your environment, is anyone looking? Because if they're not, why do you bother having that? So that's really where it comes down to it.
And even at a basic level of an internet connection. Cool. All right. I use the example. Everyone here on this call would have had an example of, oh, hey, it's slow. The customer submits a really generic issue. Oh, hey, it's slow. Okay, what's slow? When is it slow? Unless you've got that monitoring set up on that connection on that router, you don't have any historic details. You can't start to look for correlations. You can't start to dig through logs to identify root causes, those sort of things, right? So what we see far too often is when we get these tickets, oh, hey, yeah, there's an issue, whatever that might be, but there's not enough supporting information. So in many cases, we have to wait for it to happen again, or we have to be able to replicate it. But when we can't, time to resolution goes out the window. You start burning margin, you get an unhappy customer. It's a slippery slope downhill.
Absolutely. And it's a much better, I've been there firsthand with you, Ben. Like I've had that call with you. Hey, mate, got something going on. I don't have the ability to monitor this thing or whatever. What can you do to help me? That just the fact that you can make those calls to your vendors and support people around you rather than posting on a forum and saying, I don't know, this happens sometimes and I don't know why. It makes a huge difference in, like you said, Ben, time to resolution and customer satisfaction, your own time, your costs, all of it. So
we in our partner portal, for those of you that if you buy an internet connection from us, you can actually turn on free monitoring, basic monitoring, but it's purely just for that graph, and we'll tell you when things drop and whatnot, so that we've got a timeline, right? So that we can escalate to carriers and things like that and get on the same page. So if you don't have something, feel free to check that out as well. It's free, and we literally built that so that partners could But hey, there's a solution.
There is a solution.
SecureNetwork is designed to resolve a lot of these headaches, right? So it's a best of breed sort of solution, right? So it's effectively outsourcing all of these components so that, it's a best of breed right at the beginning, right? So you're not sort of presenting lots of different options, and but then throughout the lifetime, that life cycle of the service, when things do go wrong, because it's not if, let's be honest, it's when we've got the right information, whether that be from a security or whether it be a standard support issue of speed or reliability. We've got the telemetry, the information to actually get that resolved, and it's able to provide a better experience for the customer, and your techs are able to focus on other things in your business that they're more likely going to specialize in anyway, right? They're not going to, most MSPs don't have network engineers or security consultants on board, right? So when they're trying to solve something, it takes longer, right? It's just the nature. They're not as expert, the expertise in those areas isn't as high. So that's kind of where SecureNetwork sort of fits. So that's a bit about the risk, and we've sort of talked about that in depth. So the next thing I want to cover, I touched a little bit very quickly about that monitoring. We've actually expanded, or we're expanding this, and this is a project that we've had for the last sort of 2 years called Project Guardian. Now, this is a free service that we're launching to partners to help with this risk, right? And also to identify security opportunities. So if you've got one of our internet connections, we will actually monitor that service for security vulnerabilities, right? We'll let you know if things are open. We'll let you know if they're exposed. So it is completely free. First of all, it's in the partner portal. This will be enabled for, we're on the 20th. So this is going live, I think in the first week of July. So make sure you check it out. Stay tuned on for your emails. But the approach is to really provide you visibility around the vulnerabilities that we see from your edge, right? So think of your front door. We're monitoring that front door for you with a security guard there, sort of going, hey, is it open? Is it closed? Those sort of things. This is in beta at the moment, and we've been flagging services for a number of partners where we've seen really high priority ones. As part of this will be a dashboard for you across all of your WAN services, your internet services, but we will also proactively reach out to you for any that are significant have significant vulnerabilities. This is entirely free, right? The key here though is it provides an opportunity to speak to your customers about, moving up in that technology stack into a more suitable solution. Because let's say for a standard TC4 where there's the Draytech example that this dashboard will actually show you all those services that have that particular vulnerability. It'll give you the description, it'll give you the remediation sort of steps, and you can then lean on us as well for guidance on that. Or you can use it as a conversation with your customer to sort of go, hey, we need to revisit this. And whether that's secure network, hopefully it is from our side, that's how we can help, or just increasing that technology stack, putting a proper UTM out there, or just patching it, right? Getting that patch, actually that firmware update installed on that device to actually to get that vulnerability fixed up. So stay tuned on this. This is free. This will be a first sort of in Australia, but realistically we see so many tickets coming through that we want to make sure that you guys are able to have more visibility into this, because like Aaron mentioned before, connections are often one of those things. You just drop a router out on site, it's up and running, away you go. You don't think about it until something goes wrong. And what we're seeing is, in too many cases, and I'm being serious when I say that, too many, there is, even some of our, the partners that are very, very mature in their patching and whatnot, things can slip through the cracks. You've still got that human element of forgetting to patch something or forgetting to document something, those sort of things. So this is just an extra layer of that to help you guys have better visibility of that. But most importantly, using it as an opportunity, whether it's secure network or your own sort of security offering, to have a conversation with your customer, right? Rather than when you're going to site, use it as part of your QBRs, right? When you're actually, you're sitting down with the management team of your customers, using it to make sure they're all ticked off. So let's talk a little bit about sales strategies, because that's the very first one that we've got on there is, and I do say that like as part of the, like QBRs and whatnot, right? The biggest one that we find is, and this is from the book, right? So if you didn't scan that QR code, make sure you hit us up and we'll get a copy out to you. Or the Amazon link is there as well. If I'm sure there's an Audible copy of it for those that don't want to read the paperback. But ask the damn question. And I say that entirely tongue in cheek, but seriously at the same time, right? The example I used to give when we were an MSP 20 years ago, right? And talking about phones, talking about laptops, anything like that, your techs are often the best source of opportunities, because they're the ones actually out there talking to your customer, right? So getting them to highlight things to you, and then you can ask the customer, ask the question to the customer, right? And have a proper conversation around it. AJ, when you were selling, because you've sold cybersecurity solutions for a long time, and obviously you made the jump to Sophos for a reason, right? What are the most important things in your mind that you need to articulate when you have that kind of and how do you have that conversation with the customer without sort of offending them?
Yeah. So look, asking the damn question. So that can be taken in a few different ways, right? Ask that, and look, I've drilled this into staff and people forever, is ask why. It's the biggest thing. Ask why with anything you do. Ask why. Don't be satisfied with, oh, that's the way it should be because that's how it is. No, ask why. And so what I mean by that is that's asking that damn question is why. So if you are talking to someone, anyone, it doesn't matter if they are a very tiny business or a large business, ask them, are they concerned about their security? Just simply say, have you thought about your cybersecurity? That is the best way to start the conversation, because I promise you, they have read the news. They have heard what goes on to the Optuses and the Medibanks and the ongoing problems. They have heard about them. They may not have heard about them in the news or understood them, but someone at the barbecue while they were out at the weekend was telling them about it. Like, if you are not the one talking to them about it, someone else is. So you need to at least ask that question of, are they concerned about their cybersecurity? If it's a prospect, what have they done about it? If it's a very small business, if we're dealing with small business, they probably have no idea. They probably say, my MSP does that. Ask some feeder questions, ask some questions that they can take back to us, because if their current MSP hasn't had that conversation either, then great, suddenly you're the one highlighting it to them, and you put all this, not doubt, but you're educating them on what they need to be asking. So that's really important. That's very much where this book sort of comes from. It's about identifying the customer's existing gaps. So if you ask questions about, are they concerned? Great. All right. What are you doing about that? If they don't know, okay, they don't know. That's a problem. So if you start to ask simple things like, well, how do you patch your stuff? How, when there is these vulnerabilities, and there's so many different resources, as we were talking about earlier, to pull on in this scenario, how are you keeping on top of that? I don't know. All right. Who does it for you? My MSP. All right. How do they do that? Just asking why, asking how. But coming back to Guardian, can I just say, Ben, I wish Guardian was around when I was doing it, because it would have made life a lot easier. I tried to build these things on my own and do ad hoc versions of it, but it's one thing to have, I guess you touched on human error, right? It's one thing to put the thing in and say it's working now and it's secure. And then a week later, someone on your help desk opens something up for testing and then forgets to close it, and suddenly it's not secure anymore. Or you open that port for that critical app that they need, or their webcam, or the CCTV cameras, or whatever it is, and that day it's okay, but then the next day there's a vulnerability, right? So highlighting the gap is, if the customer turns around and you do some kind of scan for them, or maybe you're getting further into the conversation, and you turn around and they say, no, that needs to be like that because of blah, or that's like that because we don't use that old system, or we're migrating off that system to the cloud. Like, this is a classic one. We're getting rid of that and we're migrating. Oh, when? Not sure. Or maybe it's next month, but then next year it's still open and they're not using it anymore, but they left the security ports open. All of these things. Ask why, ask why, ask why. That is my number one thing to say on this point, of being able to at least start the conversation. And then the part there on that first point about being able to articulate the risk, that is really, really important. You don't need to be a cybersecurity expert, but you absolutely need to be able to articulate the risk of what could happen. And don't make it sound like it's, a scene out of the movie Hackers or something like that. It needs to be real world. It needs to be easy and just help them understand. Like, you don't have to go into the details of the CVE numbers and the vulnerabilities and how they do it and why. You just need to get to the point of, well, look, they're trying to steal your data. Everyone is a target. Like, hosted network are scanning through Guardian their own connections for vulnerabilities. What I can promise you is that many, many, many different hacking groups around the world are already scanning those IPs for those same vulnerabilities every day. There's services out there that do it for you. That's the point. So it's not just, I guess what I'm saying is it's exposed. And if there's a hole there, it will be found. And when it becomes enough of a hole that someone's looking at, or this type of threat actor decides that they're going to go after that particular vulnerability today because they figured out how to do something with it, then away they go. So you just need to be able to articulate that risk. And that book really does well at helping you sort of identify that gap and articulate it. So then, why do customers pursue increased security? So there's three things there. And I see this everywhere globally, not just in Australia, but globally. And it's, RIC, risk, insurance, compliance. So RIC, think of RIC if you need to remember this. RIC is your friend. So a risk of the R is the risk of getting ransomware. That is still top of mind for everyone because unfortunately, ransomware has not gone anywhere. We thought that was gone. Ransomware's been around for almost a decade now, and it's not going anywhere. We thought we would be past this thing, but it's still here. So the risk of getting ransomware or the risk of having it again, that is a major, pull on the heartstrings, emotional influence there that the business, if you can articulate the risk of getting ransomware and highlight and articulate the cost of what that would be if they were down or their backups were impacted, or that, what's the cost of having 50 staff down for a day or two? And if the answer is like, oh, well, I can just restore from backup, that's great. But what about the impact? What's it going to be, the talking to your customers about that? Them talking to their customers and having to explain that they went through a cybersecurity event. What is the impact on staff? All of these different things. These are the hidden costs of ransomware. It's not just the ransomware impact itself. So the I being insurance. So this is a big one, and it's growing in Australia. We've done a webinar on this one, Ben.
We did, a couple of months ago with the guys at SherpaTech, and ISO 365. So if you haven't checked that out, it is on our YouTube page and Vimeo page, and it's a podcast. But check it out. It was a fantastic conversation, and I mean, I learned heaps from it. So it's we've had a lot of people talking about it. So check that out. In talking about that why piece of it, the insurance one is a great conversation piece at the moment. Insurance
and compliance, like they're very similar in that insurance is asking, if you've taken out cyber insurance or you've helped your clients with those forms, you will notice that they're getting longer and longer and more detailed. That is really, really important. And then of course the so aligning to the questions in those cyber insurance questionnaires, that's the thing. So they're asking the right questions in these forms. It's funny, insurance is driving the market almost stronger than the risk part. It's a shame that that's the case, but it is it's driving it. So that's great. And it is because they don't want to have to pay out, right? So they're enforcing these things. So you can ride on the back of that as well. But again, looking to be the leader to your clients, talking to them about that. Do you have cyber insurance? No. Yes. Are you looking to seek it? Yes, I am. Maybe you can align with a cyber insurance vendor that you trust, or the SherpaTech team or whatever, and they can bring and have those conversations with you.
And I should add there as well, with insurance, we talk about like sales strategies. It's not just the fact that they might have that, but if they have insurance, their premiums can go down. Right, so you can effectively shift budget, maybe, but that's a conversation that you can have, right? And if you align with an insurance broker, it's a good kind of conversation that you can kind of go in together in that sense as well. So again, from a strategic perspective, that's a powerful conversation to be having with your customer, and to use that sort of term again, but being a trusted advisor and educating your customer. At the end of the day, they can make their own. They're going to make their own decision. But if you've given them that information, you're setting yourself up. You're positioning yourself up for success.
Yeah, and it's not to note that it's an important one. We're not going to get into it, but insurance is not an argument to not increase your cybersecurity posture. Like you can't mitigate cybersecurity risks with insurance. Insurance is there for after the fact.
Correct.
You still need to increase your posture. There's no such thing as just a magic insurance policy that'll stop it ever happening in the first place. That's not how insurance works. So, but then compliance. There are more and more compliance enforcements around today. So ISO 27001 is a big one. If you support any non-for-profits, any government-funded organizations, ISO is being forced upon many of them for future government funding. There is other ones for registered RTOs, registered training organizations, are getting ISO plus some. They have this own little thing that has been put onto them. So all of these different verticals and businesses are either being forced into compliance, or some of them are choosing to seek out these things, like the Essential 8. NIST is a bit of a favorite of mine, ISO 27001. They're all great frameworks. They all basically, look, I don't want to simplify it because it's not like that, but they all lead you in the same direction, right? That you do need to increase your cybersecurity posture. So it's a great thing to be across them. ISO, it's more informational, but being across the cybersecurity components, the IT parts of it is really important for you. NIST, there's some great NIST assessment tools out there. Sophos have one that's free that you can use. Essential 8 is a cut down version. It's not as much of a framework overall as much as it is just some key things. It's in the name, right? The Essential 8, just the essential basics, like the band-aids that must be done. But aligning to these frameworks can really help. And if you do have customers that work with other ISO 27001 organizations, I can bet you that they are being, at least if not forced into it, they've been asked the question, because part of ISO 27001 states that you should only do business with other vendors that are ISO 27001 compliant. So it's a bit of a flow on. So getting in front, and at least, again, these are sales strategies, right? So having those conversations, asking the damn question can really help. So, and then of course, the final one is how you do it as an MSP. So how you package packaging, enforcement, standardization. There's a lot of different things here in this point, but as it says, some of these things that help your customers' cybersecurity posture, but some of them are also to help you. So standardization, I think we've already spoken about that, Ben, but standardizing your tech stack, to putting the same technologies in, there's many benefits to you, the MSP, and being training and sort of vendor consolidation and things like that.
But standardization goes deeper than just like having a standard stack that you use when you use it, right? I think the important piece that sort of draws to is standardizing whenever you do an MSP plan. Make it a default, make it a requirement. No ifs, no buts.
That's right.
I feel like I'm talking to my daughter. I'm going to say no coconuts.
Standardizing configurations are important as well, right? It's not just about the product, but the configuration. That's really important. But if we're talking about more sales specific stuff, so packaging and enforcement, so there's a number of different ways you can package up these cybersecurity, postures on things like SecureNetwork. There's a lot of different ways to do this, and you can enforce them as well. So I've seen very successful enforcement done from MSPs to their clients. And what I mean by that is simply saying this is a must-have now. You must do this. It's our minimum standard. It's our minimum way of doing business. We won't do business with you unless you do these things. It's very much like what the insurance companies are doing. You're doing the same thing. It's in the best interest of the client, but it's also in the best interest of you. You can do opt-out campaigns. So Sophos has a letter in their partner portal, which is an opt-out campaign. So Ben, maybe we can share that around. But what we mean by that is you're opting out. So you are pushing to all of your clients and saying, hey, the landscape has changed. These are the things that must be done. We recommend that. The letter is pre-written for you. It's a very good letter. I'll be honest, I was a little bit scared of that kind of opt-out campaign when I was doing the MSP until I actually read that letter and realized it's actually quite softly written. It's good. And that's opting out. So basically the letter leads them to saying, okay, great, this is where you need to be now. We're going to reach out with the price increase for you unless you in writing opt out. And that way you are setting the scene. So if something does happen, it's not back on you. They can't turn around to you and say, why didn't you do X, Y, Z? Because you've put it in writing to them that they should do something and they have opted out. Packaging is, again, like many different ways to do MSP packaging. That's an entire webinar in itself. But
I think we did one.
Yeah, there you go. So packaging, there's lots of different ways, whether you split it out, whether you, again, make it part of your packages. I like the idea of date stamping your MSP agreements. So what I mean by that is like year dating them and saying that a customer can no longer be on an agreement that's more than 2 years old. So that gives you that flexibility to change things year on year. So, the landscape is changing, but also you as an MSP might change your internal tools or your stack or whatever it is. And for those of you that have been through this, it's very hard when you have like this old client on an old tool that you were getting bulk discounts for when all of your clients were on it, but now there's only one or two on it, and now it's not quite as efficient as it used to be. So you need those levers to be able to get them out of that and do the right thing from a security perspective as well. Anything to add, Ben?
Look, I think that that first one, I think having these conversations, and it is some of these conversations are uncomfortable, and I guess you have to use the out of the healthy rules out of EOS. Those of you that know it or run it, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Security is something it is something that you have to be proactive about. Right. You can't just sit on the sidelines, because if you're providing these services, you're putting a lot of risk on yourself. Right. So have a conversation, be that trusted advisor, and you'll be able to drive more opportunities. And these are things that you should be charging for. You shouldn't be giving away for free, regardless of whether it's SecureNetwork or your own service that you've developed in-house.
Can I add there, Ben, that nothing is more uncomfortable than a client that has had a cyber attack. That is, if you think the conversation is uncomfortable at the start, I promise you the conversation, I have these conversations every day in the incident response side here at Sophos, and it is stressful. It's horrible. You become desensitized to it after a while, but it's you definitely don't want to be the MSP involved in a cyber attack, whether it's your environment that has then caused customer problems or the customer's environment that you're responsible for. So I would say the conversation should absolutely not be uncomfortable. If it is, great, learn from it, record it, do whatever you need to do so it's not uncomfortable the next time. And once you do a few of them, it'll be fine.
Cool. All right. So there's some high-level sales strategies, and if you ever want to do a bit of a deep dive, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to do help you develop a sales strategy and a marketing strategy as well. So I just want to touch a little bit on our resources. One of our value propositions to our hosted network partners is that we do work very collaboratively with you guys, and that's where we've seen the most success. Things when we're doing co-selling, when we're doing events and whatnot. So our marketing concierge is a free service that is available to everyone. You can lean on our marketing team. We have resources for all of our products, but most importantly, SecureNetwork, that we will white label for you. We will even help you with things like events. So if you're wanting to run lunch and learns, roundtables to help educate your customers, we can help with that. So if you're looking to do that and you want to have more targeted conversations, and in some ways, it's rather than it being a one-to-one, a one-to-many approach can really be good for that and that education piece of it. And it is a multi-pillared approach. So we do have all of the social media and the email drip campaigns and things like that. So these are all free. So check out our marketing concierge within our partner portal. But if you ever do want to sort of get some assistance around that, please reach out. We're always happy to help. Like we touched on, there we go. They're the webinars that we talked about before. But cyber insights for Australian MSPs, navigating risks and protections. That was really, I think that was around the cyber insurance one that we were talking about. We will send out the links for these, and the MDR data sheet for the SecureNetwork and the Sophos MDR Complete will be attached to the wrap-up email as well, along with the infographic for the top 5 reasons to use MDR services. So MDR, if we didn't really touch on it, again, check out the webinar which fully goes into SecureNetwork, but that's the endpoint protection if you didn't know. But yeah, if you ever need help, reach out. We're always available. But hopefully you guys found this valuable. If you want to sort of to do a deep dive on any particular areas and you think there are other topics, please let us know. We do love to do a webinar. Our next, check out our events page. I don't think I've got it on the slide. No, I don't. But check out our events page on our website. I think it's hostednetwork.com.au/events. We have all of our upcoming and pre-recorded webinars listed there as well. AJ, as always, a big thank you. I always appreciate you lending us your time and your expertise. It's been great. So with that, we'll close it up.
Excellent. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, guys. See ya.